everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on Twitch, X, and on Facebook. I am Bryson Carver. It's going to be with you on a Wednesday, and we got college football, NFL, and we got an NBA topic that I don't know if I've ever dreaded more in the history of the show than this one. Jimmy Butler blew his ACL on Monday night. The Warriors got smoked by the Toronto Raptors last night, and I've got a pretty down in the dumps, carving up the context to bring y'all in about 10, 15 minutes. So stay tuned for it if you want to see me just suffer here live on air. Also going to get into Bryson's best 10. Obviously, there's only 4 teams left. Can't rank teams, so we're going to rank players. My top 10 players in the NFL going into conference championship weekend from the 4 teams left. Patriots, Broncos, Rams, and Seahawks. You'll want to stay tuned for that. Also going to get into the just bizarre press conference that the Buffalo Bills held yesterday with GM and now President of Football Operations Brandon Beane, the owner Terry Pegula. Very, very bizarre stuff going on in Buffalo, which I think makes the job, it's still a great job because you get to inherit Josh Allen as opposed to who knows at quarterback. But all of a sudden, Buffalo's playoff woes are starting to make more and more and more sense over time. Get to that. And of course, talk about Robert Saleh. He got hired by the Titans. Jeff Hafley got hired by the Dolphins as well. Mike McDaniel got hired by the Chargers to be their OC. Shout out to my guy Drew, who's a big Chargers fan. I know he's ecstatic about that. I wanted to focus though on Saleh. I actually think this is a really, really good hire by the Tennessee Titans, and I'll get to that at the end of today's show. But first, we've got a national champion, a brand new one once again in college football for the third straight year out of the Big Ten, and for the first time in the history of their program, the Indiana Hoosiers are national champions. They got it done Monday night against Miami, 27-21 in a game that was a little bit closer than I anticipated it to be. I thought Miami would compete. I thought Miami proved themselves over the playoff like, yeah, they're the second best team in college football. Initially, it looked like the second best team was Ohio State, and then you saw what Miami did to them in the college football playoff quarterfinal. Miami's defense is unbelievable up front. They got multiple NFL first-round picks in terms of their ability to rush the passer. Cristobal's done a fantastic job coaching this team. Malachi Toney is a superstar already in college football. And as far as I'm concerned, take out Jeremiah Smith, best wide receiver in college football. They're an excellent football team. However, with this Indiana Hoosiers team, what we just saw was the completion, was the ending of the greatest rebuild and arguably the greatest coaching job in the history of college football. We've shown this graphic after each of Indiana's playoff wins, but now it's official. Show the 3 years prior to the head coach Curt Cignetti arriving to the Indiana Hoosiers. Do we have that graphic? Go and put that up here there, because they were the worst Power 5 team at the time, Power 5 team in all of college football. Like, without a question, no doubt about it. They won 9 games in a span of 3 years. They had a 3-24 Big Ten record, 0-10 against top 25 teams. And obviously they weren't sniffing 10-win or top 10 10-win season or top 10 finishes. And they averaged just over 20 points a game. With Curt Cignetti, they are the standard bearer in college football. In 2 years, they've lost 2 games in a span of 2 years. They haven't lost since the college football playoff loss to Notre Dame last year. They're 19-1 against Big Ten teams. That's a 95% winning percentage. That's okay. 6-2 record against top 25 teams. That'll work. 2 10-win seasons, 2 top 10 finishes, and the Hoosiers average 41 points a game. So when you consider what Curt Cignetti did, and I said this a few weeks ago after they beat, or I guess a couple weeks ago, after they beat Alabama, crushed Alabama in the Rose Bowl, is I said, this wasn't a passing of the torch because Saban's obviously wasn't on the other sideline. That was Kalen DeBoer. But Curt Cignetti this is going to be his era of college football, the way that the previous 15 years prior to him was Nick Saban's era. Because in Nick Saban's era, it was a time in college football where the SEC had all the power. The SEC had all the, let's be honest, little under-the-table influence when it comes to finances. We'll leave that there. It was a defense-first sport in college football. It was a run-the-football-first sport in college football. Plays right in Nick Saban's sensibilities. And to Saban's credit, as I've said multiple times on the show, once it evolved into a quarterback-first type of sport, both in the NFL and in college football, he adapted. Because then you had Tua, then you had Jalen Hurts, then Tua, then Mac Jones, then Bryce Young. It worked. Once it became the transfer portal NIL era, he says, I don't think I can be at my best, and I don't think this program can be at its best if I continue to coach here. Kudos to Nick Saban. I think Clemson fans wish Dabo Swinney would do the same thing. Curt Cignetti, this plays right into his sensibility. The transfer portal bring a bunch of James Madison kids with him. He was the coach that got James Madison from being an FCS program to an FBS program to, hey, in the second ever 12-team playoff, they're in. Curt Cignetti set the foundation for that. Curt Cignetti inherits an Indiana Hoosiers football program that was, again, not just the worst in the Big Ten, maybe the worst in all of college football, based on the fact, again, that they are in a Power 5, now Power 4 conference. The fact that they're in the same league as the Ohio States, the Michigans, now with the USCs and the Oregons and the Washingtons of the world. This is what they've got to battle. And to do this in 2 years, to go from year one, bam, college football playoff appearance, 11-1. Yeah, you got smoked by Notre Dame, but you didn't have the players. You had a fraction of the 4 and 5-star players that your 3 playoff opponents, Alabama, Alabama, Oregon, and Miami had. And you, with the exception of the Natty, cruised to a national title. And listen, Miami has more NFL players on their roster than Indiana does. Certainly more high school blue chippers, so to speak. And Cristobal's an excellent coach. But this is, again, the culmination of the greatest rebuild in the history of college football. And Curt Cignetti, after the game, kind of summed it up. It took him a while to get there, but sort of it sunk in like, I can't believe we just did this.
Yeah, it took a lot to get here, but I'll tell you what it took to come out ahead in this game was a lot of guts. I give Miami a lot of credit. They played really hard. We couldn't get anything done couldn't protect quarterback at all. Made a few plays and adjustments, but they were back shoulders and a sprint out, got the run game going. Made the interception when we had to. A couple fourth down, we went for it. Mendoza, great run. Took some chances, found a way. Let me tell you, we won the national championship at Indiana University. It can be done, and I'm so happy for our fans. Words can't describe it.
This would be the equivalent of what just happened in college football on Monday night and over the course of the last 2 years in Indiana. This would be the equivalent as if my beloved ETSU Bucks won March Madness, won the national championship. It would be like, oh my gosh. Because, listen, ETSU, we might make March Madness this year, by the way. We are the best team in the Southern Conference. Fingers crossed. I hope we get in the dance. We'll see. But that would be like, you get in and you go the distance. That'd have been like, remember Loyola Chicago back in 2018, Sister Jean, God rest her soul? Remember they squeaked into the tournament and then they got all the way to the freaking Final Four? If they had finished the job, that's what this equivalent would have been. I mean, Indiana's not a program where it's, oh my gosh, at least initially, the NIL resources of a Miami, a USC, a Texas, an Ohio State. Nowhere near that. Oregon, certainly, with Phil Knight. Now, and I was not aware of his association with the program until I saw watching the game the other night. I see Mark Cuban with the Indiana shirt at the game, like, okay, he's gonna contribute to this football program, continue to be dominant in the future. Just wait till Indiana gets like legit high school blue chippers. And I'm sure, listen, this was the case with Saban at Bama. This has been the case with Kirby Smart at Georgia, all the top coaches in college football over the years. There's going to be a bit of a brain drain effect, so to speak. There are going to be programs that are peeling coaches off of Cignetti's staff. There's no question about it. But if you got that guy in charge, the guy who got James Madison from FCS to FBS and a college football playoff appearance not long after that, he set the foundation for that. And a guy who got Indiana to an undefeated. That's the other thing, too. Because I forget if it was Dan Lanning or if it was Steve Sarkisian, one of the smart young coaches in the sport. One of them brought up, okay, we have a 12-team playoff now. That means no one's ever going to go undefeated ever again. Like, you're going to win 16 college football games as the competition just gets harder and harder. That's not going to happen. And Indiana never at any point in the college football playoff trailed. So much of what makes Cignetti's team great this year is that it is what made some of those Patriots teams with Belichick and Brady great. What's made the Mahomes Andy Reid dynasty great. They really don't screw up. They kind of wait for you to screw up and then they pounce on it. And occasionally they'll take risk. And that transitions me to Fernando Mendoza. And Curt Cignetti's belief that it's going to be viewed as the play of the college football season, and absolutely should be. The quarterback draw, 4th down and 4 in the red zone. Cignetti said it could have settled for a field goal. That's why I'm a little surprised he settled for the 3 late in the game. Ended up working out, but it was strange based on his play calling earlier in the quarter to say, you know what? We got the Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. He's a tough son of a gun. I mean, if you went on social media and seen like the bruises on this kid's body, like he took some shots against Miami. I'm going to put it in this kid's hands and live with the results. And Fernando Mendoza makes the play of the year, bouncing off of, I think it was 4 or 5 tackles for the touchdown to put Indiana up 10. And again, they never relinquished that lead. So much. And listen, on this show, I try when it comes in the draft process to rely heavily and almost singularly on draft experts, on scouts, on the Mel Kipers, the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, guys like that. But it is hard not to respond at times to some of the just absurd narratives surrounding some of these excellent, supremely talented players. Caleb Williams, man, you know what? He paints his nails and he cried with his mom that one time in the stands. I just don't know if that's a franchise quarterback. I just don't know. And it's like, yeah, he's a great leader, Lincoln Riley, and the locker room in USC swears by him. His arm talent is out of this world great, and he's a playmaker if there ever was one at the quarterback position, with the exception of Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. I think Caleb Williams is going to work in the NFL, and you see he obviously has this far. Fernando Mendoza does not have that kind of upside, in my opinion. But you see folks on social media, and we'll play the bite. He's kind of corny. He's kind of a nerd. He doesn't have this like big athletic commanding presence. Well, I don't know. Again, drawing on the Caleb Williams comp in this regard, players in the Indiana locker room freaking love that kid. Not just in terms of what the plays he make on the field, but in the locker room. If you think Fernando Mendoza, he's kind of weird. I heard one person use the word geek, like, I just don't really. Did you see the hits he took at times this season? I mean, look no further. First play of the game, of the Big Ten championship game against the Ohio State Buckeyes. Defending national champions, favorite in Vegas to win the Natty. Arvell Reese, all of these guys that Ohio State brings to the table. First play of the game, bam! Gets knocked to the ground, ends up having to come out for a play. First play, it's like, oh my God, Fernando Mendoza's knocked out for the game. This is devastating for Indiana. Comes right back in the game. Makes some big-time throws in the fourth quarter to help them win that game 13-10 and claim the Big Ten title. In this case, there was a roughing the passer call that should have been called. He gets hit under the chin, his lips bleeding. He's taking some shots out there. Miami is a physical team. That's a Mario Cristobal coach team. You can tell, they're trying to get under his skin. Does not rattle him one bit. Takes all the hits that he does in that play against Miami. On 4th down and 4 with a chance to really potentially decide the outcome of the game. If you get stopped short on there, here comes Miami. They're down 3. They've got all the momentum, and maybe they win that game. Instead, bounce off a couple tackles, ends up saying, I have got the first down. I could kind of go down here. No, I want the touchdown. I want 6 here. That's the type of dude that can be a franchise quarterback in the National Football League. That's the type of dude who makes all the big throws on 3rd and 4th down. That the Las Vegas Raiders believe can be their future franchise quarterback. Now, again, a lot of being a successful QB in this league depends heavily. Where do you end up? You could, for teams that get the number 1 overall pick, because you got to be bad to get it, unless there's a trade, you could inherit worse than the Raiders. We'll see who their new head coach is going to be, but Tom Brady's in the building. That can't be a bad thing. We'll see what they do as it relates to, again, the coach they bring in, but you've got Brock Bowers, you got Ashton Genty. Max Crosby, for now, is on the defensive side of the ball, rushing the passer. They need to upgrade their O-line. Listen, I'm not saying they're a Fernando Mendoza away from, bam, the Raiders are going to be a playoff team in 2026. I do not think that's the case. They still have got to rebuild that offensive line. Aside from Max Crosby, the defense is awful. They've got a ways to go. But they've got Bowers, I think, is arguably the best tight end in football. And Ashton Genty, second half of the year, really kind of came on for the Raiders. Show why he was a top 10 pick last year. You give this kid those pieces, continue to build around him, give him a smart head coach, preferably in the offensive side of the football. Maybe the Raiders can return to the glory days. But to anybody that's doubting, and again, we'll play the sound by, he's not, he doesn't sound like, I don't know, LeBron James or something. You know, just this big, tough, physical athlete behind the mic. You see the hits this kid has taken and get right back up. That's the type of dude that can be a franchise quarterback. Fernando Mendoza after the game with Indiana winning the national championship.
I mean, it was going to be a physical game. And, you know, we had to play physical, and we did play physical. We elevated it. And it's victory so sweet for everybody, for the entire Hoosier Nation. But also, you know, it's super sweet to myself. I was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school. I got declined to walk on offer to the University of Miami. Full circle moment here playing in Miami for all the friends and family. I can't thank Coach Nettie enough and Coach Whitmer and Coach Anna for taking a chance on me and just give all the glory to God.
And that's one thing, too, he brought up in his answer. That's something, too, that matters a lot for franchise quarterbacks. Most of them don't come from blue blood programs. Patrick Mahomes came from Texas Tech. Josh Allen came from Wyoming. Lamar Jackson came from, Louisville. Joe Burrow went to LSU, but that's not a school necessarily that's produced a lot of great quarterbacks over time. Like Joe Burrow's kind of the exception to that, and there are exceptions to every rule. This kid, like you said, 2-star recruit. Cal actually got beat up a lot in the game when the Cal Bears played Miami back in 2024 when Cam Ward was on the team. He's been through the battles, been through the struggles, comes to Indiana, ain't a soul, maybe even in Bloomington, that expected this team to do anything this season. I'm like, they made the playoff last year. They'll probably win 8, 9, maybe even 10 games, be a respectable team. But, they're going to cruise, go undefeated, and win the national championship. Curt Cignetti deserves the bulk of the credit, but his quarterback, who's to me the lock to be the first overall pick in the draft next year, deserves a big chunk of the credit as well. Congratulations, big congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers. One of the most shocking turnarounds in not just college football history, but in sports history. To do it, it's one thing if you inherit Indiana, they're bad, they're awful, they're a joke, and 5-6 years, like they get better and better and better, and you see the progression, and by year 5, year 6, then you win your natty. Playoff year 1 natty, undefeated natty in year 2, that's all-time coaching by Curt Cignetti, and he deserves gigantic credit. He didn't smile much, but you know what? He's all business, and that's what I've said about what makes this Indiana team work. Then we'll move to the Warriors, unfortunately, is that Curt Cignetti's the all business, never smiles. The team could be up 100 points. He's still scowling. And Fernando Mendoza is this upbeat, optimistic, patch in the back type of teammate. Like those two kind of complement each other. You can't have too much of one or the other. Really cool story and not just a cool story, but an outstanding team. Indiana, they were the best team in the league in college football all season long, and they're rewarded with winning a national championship. Ah, man. So here's the thing. Back in October, to be exact, October 21st, I did a special Tuesday show. Usually the show is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. But I did a show on Tuesday for a number of reasons. Number one, it's middle of October. There's a lot going on, World Series, football, the whole bit. And the NBA season was starting that night. It also happened to be the 6-year anniversary of Carving It Up, October 21st, 2019. So hey, let's do a celebration show, talk about whatever's going on in sports, what have you. And at the end of the show, I made some NBA predictions. I predicted Luka to be the league MVP. Some of the surprise teams I think would come out of this year. And my final prediction, who wins the NBA World Championship, I said the following. I clarified this last year, but people apparently didn't think I did. So let's do it again. Knock on wood that Steph is healthy. That's the big one. If this team is healthy, let's not Steph. If the main character, Steph, Draymond, Jimmy, are healthy, the Golden State Warriors will win the 2026 NBA title. I am booking it. As long as those three are healthy, that's the big thing. As long as they're healthy, they're going to win the title. Well, they're not healthy anymore because Jimmy Butler blew his ACL on Monday. And so, probably the most down on the dumps I've been before this segment, but we'll do it anyway. As the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, just give me my theme music. Just play it. Just play it. On On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, we're not only going to look at Jimmy Butler's value to the Golden State Warriors, but also what the Warriors' path moving forward looks like. So let's start with this. Jimmy, just in and of himself, was just by the raw numbers, incredibly valuable to the Warriors. We could show you those numbers right now on the show. He was second in points per game. Again, this is on the Warriors. Second in points, second in rebounds, third in assists, first in steals. Had pretty good shooting splits. 51 from the field, 37 from three, which was one of the best of his career. He's shooting the ball quite well from three-point range on limited attempts this year. And 86% for the free throw line is a guy who gets there around 7, 8, 9 times a game. Like Jimmy Butler, just on the Warriors, incredibly valuable. But the whole Jimmy Butler experiment from day one, Steph Curry's still great, and we have an obligation to maximize our ability with him still being an elite basketball player to win a championship. Because when you go into the 2024-25 season, I remember coming in, I'm like, I like the, I mean, obviously I love Steph, Draymond's still there, I like the roster, believe in Kerr, more on him later. This team cannot win a championship. Not even close. Steph needs a legit number 2 co-star. And they were 500 and they were in the play-in. It didn't look very good at all. And Steph it looked like he was declining as a player, in large part because I think Steph, as the insanely competitive individual he was, knew I could be at my best and we have a 0% chance at winning a title here. The Warriors made a push for Kevin Durant. My sources told me it was basically a done deal. Kevin Durant himself said, I don't want to be on the Warriors again. Okay, fine. So then plan B, they trade for Jimmy Butler, who wanted to trade from Miami. And the results with Jimmy Butler, they speak for themselves as far as how successful the Warriors were. Go ahead and show that graphic. So since the start of last season, the Warriors with Jimmy Butler won about 67% of their games. Without him, 45% of their games. So he's immensely valuable to this basketball team. But again, going back to what I said initially, it wasn't just, hey, can we win a title last season, which the Warriors got hot down the stretch, beat the 2-seed Houston Rockets. We're about to face the 6-seed Timberwolves. Steph Curry pulls his hamstring, strains his hamstring, misses the rest of the series, and the Warriors get gentlemen swept. I am of the firm belief if Steph is healthy, they absolutely beat Minnesota. And who knows if they beat Oklahoma City, because the Thunder did play 2 7-game series, and before Jimmy even got to the Warriors beat the Thunder twice that regular season. We'll never know what happened. I'm of the mindset the Warriors absolutely could have beaten the Oklahoma City Thunder in that series and therefore would have won the championship. But that's over now. The whole idea, Steph is great. Steph still wants to be a Warrior. Therefore, because he's great, because he's the greatest player in the history of our franchise, we owe it to him after feeling some pretty mediocre roster since the departure of Kevin Durant. We owe him to give him one last legitimate push. And it's reflected, not just, I don't even think the effect was on the court, which obviously it was there. Jimmy averaged 20 a game, got to the line. Again, just getting to the line slows it down. Steph gets a breather. The offense gets a chance to rest, not only on the court, but in the locker room and also we actually have a chance now to win this thing. It's reflected directly in Steph's numbers. Go and show his numbers before Jimmy Butler got there, since the start of last year without Jimmy Butler. Okay numbers, 22 a game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. Like, okay, not near what we're used to from Steph. 43 from the field, you want that to be a little higher. 38 from 3 is good, but not Steph good. And 94% for the free throw line. He's always going to be automatic from the charity stripe. And the Warriors were 5 games under 500. When Jimmy got there, if Steph and Jimmy play together, Steph goes back to being one of the 5 to 7 best players in basketball. Averaging 27 a game on 47 from the field. Let's call it 40 from 3. It's 39.9. It's 40% from 3, 92 from the line. And the Golden State Warriors, when Steph and Jimmy Butler played, they won 70% of their games. Like, that's the reality. And that's gone now. On the play, ironically, against the Miami Heat, Brandon Podziemski throws Jimmy Butler like an entry pass, high post, comes down awkwardly, holds his knee, whole arena goes silent, and you knew pretty much immediately right there, this is probably pretty bad. So the outlook for the rest of this season for the Warriors is unless Nico Harrison gets hired by the Milwaukee Bucks and they trade Giannis to Golden State, barring that, they have a 0% chance of winning. I'm not so sure how much longer LeBron's going to be a Laker. We know LeBron and Steph are very fond of each other, love playing with each other at the Olympics. You could try a Hail Mary at LeBron. I'm not sure you'd have to give up that many assets. It's probably Kuminga, a draft pick, maybe 2. You get LeBron, you make one last push. The old guy, Steph, LeBron, Draymond, see what happens. Can LeBron at age 41 be the second best player and a champion? I'm not sure about that. You could attempt it. But I can say with almost certainty, and it hurts to say it, of course, as a Warriors fan, the Warriors' chances of winning a title this year are dead. They died with Jimmy Butler's ACL blowing out. What I'm thinking about is moving forward. Because in 2 months, Steph Curry is going to be 38 years old. He's in year 17 of his career. Again, you wouldn't know it. He's averaging 27 a game. I've said for this entire show's existence, going back to 2019, 2021, I've said I think Steph's going to be the Tom Brady of the NBA. Not in that he's going to be the GOAT, but in that I think if he wants to play this long, I think he could be in 41, 42, 43 and still be like, that's like I'm not the best player in the league, but like that's an all-star caliber guy. Steph takes care of his body. Steph's game translates and is something that can carry him to a long career. Even if Steph's a spot-up shooter, he'll still have value in the NBA. The NBA that he helps create, essentially. But as I mentioned earlier, Steph's a competitor. Steph wants to play meaningful basketball games. Steph had, according to people that I trust implicitly, had the Warriors not pulled a trigger on Jimmy Butler or on another legit co-star with Steph, the tea leaves were there the prior offseason during the Olympics when Steph was playing with LeBron, KD, Ann Edwards, Devin Booker, Embiid, all of these great players. And then he has to go back to Draymond Green, who's still good in his role, but Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, Brandon Pajemski, like a good roster. Not they're not the Wizards, but nowhere near a team that has the ability to compete for a championship if you don't have a number 2 co-star. Steph suggested in multiple interviews in 2024, I want to be a Warrior for my rest of my career as long as they're focused on winning. As long as they show me we're focused first and foremost on winning championships at the end of my prime. Now it's not so much the Warriors aren't focused on winning titles, it's they don't have the assets to. Jonathan Kuminga played last night, played pretty well, still committed some boneheaded turnovers, which has always been my issue with Kuminga. Forcing the ball into double teams. Like he's not a guy that fits in Steve Kerr's system. Like we know that. You could try again a move. If you want to make a move for Michael Porter Jr., be my guest. Michael Porter Jr. with Steph, Jimmy, and Draymond. Oh, absolutely that team can win a title. You're putting a 25-point per game guy in with Jimmy, who averages 20. Steph, who's 27 a game and is still great. And Draymond, the defense and the depth, and Curry. Absolutely that team can win a title. If MPJ's your 2, not great. You're probably a playing team. Maybe you could get the right matchup. Maybe a shock the world. Steph goes nuclear and you win a playoffs. Who knows? That team can't win 4 series. That they just can't. And so the uncomfortable question has to be, where's Steph at mentally? Like, I think he's going to be a Warrior the rest of this season. I would be gobsmacked. The trade deadline's 2 weeks from now. If Steph Curry's not a Warrior in 2 weeks, I will be as shocked as I've ever been on this show. The offseason could be a bit of a different story. If the Warriors are devoid of assets to make a legit move, because someone, shout out to Chris Broussard. I love Chris Broussard, but he was suggesting, hey, maybe make a move for Anthony Davis. I'm like, coin flip Davis, not able to stay healthy. He's hurt again. He's getting older. Like, no, that's not going to get the Warriors to contention. If Steph recognizes, man, I'm so great. I mean, I was just voted the other day, not an all-star, an all-star starter in the Western Conference at 37 going on 38 years of age. I'm still awesome, indisputably a top 10 player in the NBA. I want to compete for championships, man. And since the departure of KD, the Warriors seasons have gone as follows. They had the worst record in 2019-20. Again, KD had left. Steph got hurt. Clay was already hurt. Like that was a rebuild year. 2021, no Clay. The Warriors are a play-in team. They lose 2 games to the Lakers and Grizzlies. 2022, boy, looking back, does the 2022 title not look like just the gold star in Steph's resume? You took a team with Andrew Wiggins, a receding Klay Thompson, Draymond, who was still excellent, and then a bench with Otto Porter Jr. and Nemanja Bjelica. Kuminga and Moody weren't really integral parts of the rotation. Kevon Looney, you took that team to a effing championship. 2023, same roster, second round exit. 2024, same roster, missed the playoffs. Make the Jimmy trade last year. You go out in the second round because Steph went down. And now this year, Jimmy's got a torn ACL, and your ceiling is capped at a 7 seed. If Steph looks at the landscape of the NBA, Oklahoma City's not going anywhere. Denver's not going anywhere. Minnesota's not going anywhere. Could he look at a team like a Minnesota, a Houston Rockets? Could he look out east? He'd never go to the Cavs. Could he look at a team such as, is it on the board? He looks at Milwaukee. Giannis does not want to leave. And teams up with Giannis and Antetokounmpo with the Milwaukee Bucks and make a push for an NBA championship with a pretty easy Eastern Conference? Maybe. Number one thing for the Golden State Warriors. You do, and I think this is pretty obvious, but you do not move Steph Curry unless he asks you to. That's the greatest player in the history of franchise. I would make the case. I was thinking about this yesterday. I don't think there's an athlete currently playing that is more beloved by his team and his team's fan base than Steph Curry is to the Golden State Warriors. Current athletes like Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, Josh Allen on the Bills. I mean, there's plenty you could throw out there. Current players with their franchise now, I don't think there's any more beloved than Steph with the Warriors. But if he values, and he's a competitor, I want to win, man. I've tasted not, obviously being a dynasty, but just being in the mix every single year, being in the Western Conference Finals, being in dogfights the finals with LeBron. And we almost won with a beat-up team against the Toronto Raptors in 19. And I carried the team on my back in 2022 to win a championship. I'm 30 at this point, 38 years old. I don't want to have to carry that on my back anymore. Like if I could be the number 2 guy or be the number 1 guy on a team that's got a lot of depth, ring 5, now the Magic debates becomes even more interesting. He can't get that with the Warriors right now. And as much as this pains me to my soul to say on this show, I think it's fair to say Steph Curry's days of winning championships or being even in contention for championships with the Golden State Warriors, that's done. That's over. I mean, it's Giannis. Who are they going to give up for Giannis? I said this last year when Jimmy was healthy. Who are they going to give up for Giannis? That would be a better offer than what Houston or San Antonio. You don't have it. So the decision for the Warriors, keep Steph as happy as you possibly can. It's not like that's a hard thing to do. He's a low-maintenance player. But if Steph goes to the front office and says, I'll always be a Warrior, I want to win. I want to contend for titles. I'm still, Steph wouldn't say this verbatim, but I'm averaging 27 a game. I'm an all-star starter. I'm going to be all-NBA once again. Maybe second team all-NBA in 2025. Or 6, rather. I want to compete. He's got every right to do that. And the Warriors, he has changed that franchise as much as any player in the history of the league outside of probably LeBron and Cleveland. You owe that to him. So on this depressing edition of Carving Up the Context, when Jimmy blew his ACL, so did the Warriors' chances of ever winning again with Steph Curry at the helm. And I mentioned Steve Kerr earlier. A report came out from, I think it was Logan Murdoch. Steve Kerr, and we knew this, is in the last year of his deal. It's on the board he does not return as the head coach next season because maybe he looks at it like Steph possibly could and says, I've been here 12 years. We can't win championships anymore. We know Steve's had health problems. We can't win here more. Steve might take a year off. He'll be the head coaching candidate on the market in the 2026 or 2027 cycle. I think we're certainly seeing the end of the Warriors in championship contention. We might be seeing the end of the Steph Curry era in Golden State. I think it's a 0% chance it happens in the next 2 weeks. I think it's 50-50 whether it happens in the offseason. I hope and pray to God not, but I think it might be. So that's it for this very depressing, painful, excruciating edition of Carving Up the Context. When we come back, let's talk about another franchise that doesn't have their you-know-what together, the Buffalo Bills. And then my top 10 players in conference championship weekend in the National Football League. And then at the end of the show, talk about Robert Saleh and his fit with the Tennessee Titans. That's coming up. I'll see if I can recover in 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Monday. So, what a just disastrous last 96 hours it has been for the Buffalo Bills as an organization. So, you lose in devastating fashion to the Denver Broncos on Saturday night, in large part because Josh Young committed not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 turnovers in that game. And we talked about this on the show on Monday. It's kind of going viral on Instagram and TikTok. Feel free to check out the clip. I'm not exactly making myself a lot of friends in upstate New York right now. But that was clearly and obviously an interception. And anybody who debates otherwise either doesn't know the rules or is just straight up lying. So you have that. A couple days later, McDermott gets fired. So you're looking for a new head coach. Brandon Beane, who's drafted a grand total of 2 Pro Bowlers out of 56 draft picks with the Buffalo Bills, he gets promoted to president of football operations. And yesterday, Brandon Beane, now GM and president of football operations, and Terry Pegula, the owner of the team, have a press conference in Buffalo where they're just more Pegula than anybody, blaming everybody. Let's just take a listen. There was a question about the Keon Coleman pick. Now, Keon Coleman was picked high up in the draft in 2024. Really talented young player and has been, let's be honest, a bust. I mean, he's been a bust. He got healthy scratches during the second half of the season for Buffalo, despite the fact, and we knew this, their receiving core was extremely limited. I mean, that's the reality. Take a listen to Terry Pegula just straight up blaming Sean McDermott for the Keon Coleman pick, and just take a listen to the audio.
Obviously, with the Keon Coleman signing, which hasn't worked out, how do you answer the fact that you have not given Josh a good enough wide receiver room thus far?
Yeah, I mean, can I interrupt? I'll address the Keon situation. The coaching staff pushed to draft Keon. I'm not saying Brandon wouldn't have drafted him, but he wasn't his next choice. That was Brandon being a team player and taking advice of his coaching staff, who felt strongly about the player. And, he's taken, for some reason, heat over it and not saying a word about it. But I'm here to tell you the true story.
Before I even give my take, can I just say this? Does Terry Pegula, I don't think I've ever seen him before. Am I crazy or does he look like Michael Caine? The legendary act. Does he look like Michael Caine or am I tripping? You can go back 10 seconds on this live. There's an uncanny resemblance. Maybe there's some relation there. Who knows? Here's what I do know is, first of all, we don't have the rights to show you the footage. There's literally audio from the 2024 draft where Brandon Beane, GM and president of football operations for the Bills, It's his call to draft Keon Coleman. So Pegula acting like, he was just being a team player. He was going with his coach, but he didn't really want to draft him. But, he didn't want to ruffle any feathers. It was his call more than McDermott's. But it's all starting to make sense now. It's all starting to now that makes that 2 and 2's coming together. 1 + 1 = 2 right here. Because I talked about on Monday's show is this, and Josh Allen's oddly the only one not doing this, and kudos to Josh. It's always somebody else's fault with this franchise. With Sean McDermott, not only was he ripping the referees, I'm standing up for Buffalo and all this, no, you're probably trying to save your job. And again, blaming the officials for a great play by Taquan McMillan. You're blaming the refs. Bills fans really blame the officiating, which enraged me. And you can check out my reaction on Instagram and TikTok. Feel free. So you have that. Then you have, according to Ian Rappaport, this is interesting. This is from Ian Rappaport directly. This is quote, "My understanding is McDermott had concerns about how much talent there was, and that didn't sit well in the building." So McDermott blames the officials. By the way, according to reports, goes at the team plane, goes to more reporters to blame the officials further for what was, again, clearly and obviously an interception. Then with the front office, with, I imagine, Brandon Beane and Terry Pegula, he's like, I don't think our team's good enough to compete. That didn't sit well. And then you have Pegula at the press conference, like, hey, guy sitting to my left, Beane, totally not his fault. The guy we just kicked out of the building, fired after 9 years, completely his fault that we drafted the biggest bust in the organization. By the way, for the record, Keon Coleman's still a Bill. It's like he's been cut or traded. He's still in the building. And the Bills need weapons, so he very well might be back for 2026. Who knows? It's all starting to make sense now. This is why, we'll show the graphic we showed the other day. This is why the Buffalo Bills have been the biggest underachievers in the league for the last 6 years. Since 2020, first in points allowed, record, but of course, the most important stat, they have not been to a Super Bowl. They obviously have not won a Super Bowl. Is that there's an element with this team of disorganization. There's an element. I mean, I heard someone bring up today on television. The Pegula family owns, I think I'm not a hockey fan. I think the Buffalo Sabres is what the team is called. They've been there for a long time. They fired 5 head coaches. So in other words, the other organization they own, complete dysfunction. So is the Buffalo job the best job? Is it it's probably still the second best job just by virtue of getting Josh Allen. But there was kind of this, what's the better job? Ravens, you get Lamar. Bills, you get Josh Allen. You get the last 2 league MVPs. Can't go wrong, right? I think you can. And I hate to say this as a Steelers fan, Baltimore, I think, separated is the better job. Baltimore's always been well run. Baltimore's got good front office, good ownership group with Steve Bisciotti. I mean, look at his press conference compared to Buffalo's press conference. Steve Bisciotti, they asked him, hey, was John Harbaugh going to keep his job if you beat Pittsburgh? Yeah, for another week. Okay, so he had already decided, unless we win the Super Bowl, Harbaugh's gone. He had already decided. Compare that to Pegula, who's asked, the reasons for McDermott getting fired, and Pegula said, because we lost to Denver. So by what he told us there, it doesn't sound like McDermott was per se on the hot seat if Buffalo went on a deep run, whereas with Baltimore, unless they won the Super Bowl, it was pretty much already decided. We're going to be hiring a new head coach in 2026. So Baltimore, organized, well run, they draft well. Whereas with Buffalo, it's really not the case. McDermott is, I've always said, a very good coach, not a coach who can get you to the next level. Josh Allen is an all-time talented quarterback who kind of melts in the biggest spots. See Kansas City the last 2 years in Denver on Saturday night. The moment gets a little too bright for him. And then Brandon Beane, who's not very good at his job. Let's be honest. He's not very good at his job. We used to rip Belichick on the show for years. Like, he hadn't drafted an offensive Pro Bowler, with the exception of Mac Jones, but come on. Hadn't drafted an offensive Pro Bowler since Gronk in 2010. Well, Brandon Beane's drafted 2 Pro Bowlers and 56 draft picks. So he hasn't done so well for himself either. And so when you watch that and I highly recommend people to, if you want to watch the whole thing, check out some of the clips from it. It's telling, man. You get a little bit of a look inside to what's going on in this behind the scenes situation with the Buffalo Bills. I saw that they interviewed Joe Brady today to be their future head coach. That's been somebody. Shout out to Patrick Brown, my good pal and contributor to the Grid Network. Something he suggested in the comments on the show and in his articles. Check those out on the Grid's website. He suggested Bills fans be like, hey, Joe Brady's the guy. Maybe. He might be the guy. He's an offensive coach. He worked with Burrow at LSU. He worked with Josh Allen with the Bills as the OC. But there is implicit risk. And it's a tough balancing act. Do you go with a retread coach, or do you go with somebody who's like a Brian Dable, for example, or do you go with somebody who's never been a head coach before, but we like the upside, but the Bills are in win now mode? Josh Allen's going to be 30 this offseason. He's in his prime, but forever. He's not Caleb Williams or Bo Nix or one of these guys. Drake May, you've got kind of a clock here. It's ticking. 6 straight playoff appearances, technically 7 straight playoff appearances, but 6 really a legitimate chance to win the Super Bowl. I don't know. You get a good look into the dysfunction in Buffalo. I mean, Terry Pegula blaming Sean McDermott for the Keon Coleman pick. Buddy, we have you guys on tape. We have Brandon Beane on tape saying we should draft him. Like, you can't, thank God for cameras, right? Or otherwise people be able to get away with a lot of lies. But it's just, you see this and you say, you understand why the Bills were such a dumpster fire of an organization for years prior to the Josh Allen, Sean McDermott era. The pieces are starting to fit together. It's not a bad job just by virtue of getting, the second best quarterback in the world, Josh Allen. Outside of that, not a lot. I mean, you got to coach against the Patriots, who are getting better year by year. I don't know. It's not a great job whatsoever, as far as I'm concerned. Not a bad job. It's not the Browns or something, but it's Baltimore's the better job. And I would make a case. I'm not so sure Pittsburgh is the better job. Call me a biased Steelers fan, feel free, and I might be. But you get the ultimate job security in Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, you're going in a situation where you can get a complete rebuild and the backing of the fans who want a rebuild in an organization who do not fire coaches. They've had 3 since 1969, as we all know. Not a great look for the Buffalo Bills. Quickly, though, on Pittsburgh, then I'll move to my top 10 players in Conference Championship weekend. Because there's been a lot of reports. Brian Flores was brought in for a second interview. You guys remember I said on last Monday when Tomlin resigned, is that Kevin Stefanski would be my first pick. He got the Atlanta job. I think he'll do well there. Brian Flores would be my second pick. Now, I prefer to go with an offensive guy, but if they do go defense, Flores would be my first pick. Chris Shula's gotten some buzz. I wouldn't be against that. He's a McVay guy, but I think in today's NFL, even if you have a D'Amico Ryans, a Mike McDonald, both awesome A-plus head coaches, you are really reliant on the OC staying in the building. That's why the Patriots are set, man. Is that, Mike Vrabel is a defensive guy. Josh McDaniels, their OC, he's not going anywhere because he bombed twice as a head coach. So the Patriots are set. Whereas if you get a defensive coach, he's great. You get a smart OC, guess what? That OC is going to get hired by somebody in 2-3 years. That's why I prefer to go not just offensive, but young offensive, which is why the Mike McCarthy news scares the you-know-what out of me. Because McCarthy was interviewed, I think today, by the Steelers. And listen, because I used to be not a McCarthy defender, but I used to say, like, McCarthy's not as bad as people think. He's not Brandon Staley or something. But Mike McCarthy from Pittsburgh, he's got ties there. I mean, you could tell just by the way he says Don Ton or First Don. He's a Yinzer, no question about it. Somebody will, and I think should give him an opportunity. Obviously, we know about his time in Green Bay, won a Super Bowl there in Rodgers, 3 straight 12-win seasons with the Cowboys. Underachieved badly in the playoffs, but 3 straight 12-win seasons. He can coach. Dak had the best year of his career with Mike McCarthy calling plays. We need fresh blood. We need a new, innovative, and McCarthy is not that. I mean, it was Cowboys reporters talked about, and we still have to see if Schottenheimer's the guy. I think there's some promising signs there after year 1. But a lot of Cowboys reporters would talk about when they would watch training camp, like, wow, the Cowboys are using a lot of motion. In 2025, that shouldn't be a revelation. That tells you McCarthy didn't use it at all. And among other things that show that he's behind the times as a coach. I've said often, on this show. As a matter of fact, can we get that? Because I wasn't planning to talk a ton of McCarthy. Do we have, let me get the Mike McCarthy graphic on this show, because it is stacked. I did this on Carving Up the Context when Tomlin stepped down. Give me about a minute and we'll get this on here, because it is, okay, I think we've got it. It's striking. So, all right, let's get this graphic ready. I'm on Canva right now, so just re-downloading this again and putting this on air for you guys to see, because it's important to know. Okay, here we go. So I said on Monday's show, a couple Mondays ago, when Tomlin got fired, or Tomlin stepped down, Tomlin's the defensive version of Mike McCarthy and vice versa. Go and show the resume now, because they're the same guy. 19 seasons, 18 seasons. 13 playoff appearances, 12 playoff appearances. 8 division titles, 8 division titles. Now, Tomlin has a much better winning percentage, 628 to 608, but McCarthy has a much better playoff record, 11-11 versus 8-12, than Tomlin. Essentially, same guy. And it's not like McCarthy is going to be the long-term option, which the Steelers, I imagine, based on their history, are hoping for. With Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Tomlin, 3 coaches in whatever it is, 57 years. That is why, and this report made me feel better. Because I would not be against the Flores hiring whatsoever. I think he'd be if there's any coordinator who deserves a second chance to be a head coach, I think it's Flores. I think he was done dirty in Miami, and I've maintained that 4 years after he was fired. But if it ain't Flores, because I prefer young offensive coach. I saw this, and it made me feel really, really good. According to Jerry Dulac, who's a fan, we've quoted him on the show many times. He's an excellent, excellent insider in Pittsburgh. He reported Nate Scheelhaus. I learned to say his name right. I want to make sure I didn't butcher it. Nate Scheelhaus, who currently is the passing game coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. Young, 34 years old, offensive coach from the McVay tree. We know those guys tend to be successful. This is from Jerry Dulac. Quote, Nate Scheelhaus is giving off the Mike Tomlin vibe, the same level of impressiveness Tomlin had when he was interviewing in 2007. Dulac specifically said Scheelhaus had an impressive interview with the Steelers. Now, there have been Steelers fans suggest that, hey, if we hire Chris Shula, who's the defensive coordinator for the Rams, bring in Scheelhaus to be the OC. While I would be very happy with that, Scheelhaus is eventually, if he's as good as the reports suggest, he interviews well, the Rams McVay speaks incredibly highly of him, then he's going to get hired pretty immediately. Hiring Nate Scheelhaus would signify a number of very encouraging things for me as a Steelers fan. Number one, they go offensive coach. They haven't gone with that in the modern NFL era, literally. I mean, Noll, Cowher, and Tomlin, all defensive guys. They go offensive guy. They go young offensive guy. That's who's successful in the NFL today, by and large. They go with a McVay guy. You go from the guy with Mike Tomlin, who had no coaching tree, none of his guys went on to get head coaching gigs in the NFL, to McVay, bunch of his guys. They talk about Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur. The number of McVay's guys have gone on to get jobs and done quite well for themselves. But more than anything, by hiring, as opposed to hiring McCarthy, who I could be wrong, I think he's in his early 60s, by hiring a Nate Scheelhaus, who's 34 and young and innovative, and it's his first job, you can tear it down. This is why I've suggested, TJ Watt, God bless him. Love me some TJ Watt. TJ Watt has been on the record. He doesn't want to play for anybody other than Mike Tomlin. Now, whether he'll stick to that, we'll see. You know what you get for TJ Watt as it pertains to assets? Cam Hayward, I'm a little iffy on because you wouldn't get a ton for him, and he's a Steeler. We're not even sure if Hayward's going to retire or not, but you trade Jalen Ramsey. I think you move DK Metcalf, who nearly cost you the season in Week 16 against the Detroit Lions by letting his emotions get the best of him. That was the problem with George Pickens to a greater degree even before that. New culture, new offensive culture, ton of assets. You go into this draft class, again, maybe the Steelers see something that I don't, and they're professional scouts and I'm not. When I see these mock drafts mocking Ty Simpson to the Steelers, that makes me nervous. Because Fernando Mendoza is far and away the best quarterback in this draft, especially with no Dante Moore. If Ty Simpson's the second best, I would not be against taking Trinidad Chambliss. But I've said on the show, much as I like him, he's the type of guy that would probably need to sit for a year. He's got some developing to do. If the Steelers want to do that, absolutely. Got no problem with that. My strategy, the way I would do it, tear it down, attain a lot of assets, and build an offensive line. Rebuild over time the defense with some of these late round draft picks. It's a great offensive tackle draft, so you could upgrade that, which the Steelers have bombed up on tackle picks in the Tomlin era. You imagine with an offensive guy, they would not. And then in 2027, a much better quarterback draft. You imagine with the Steelers having a bad record because they traded all their good players, their good veteran players, you could take Arch Manning or Dante Moore or somebody else who shows themselves to be worthy of being a high first-round pick. So I don't know. Flores reportedly interviewed well. I would if I come on my show, Brian Flores has been hired by the Steelers. Great hire. Love it. If they hire McCarthy, it's like, oh God, it's just the offensive version of Tomlin. Like, we're back on the same train. If they hire Shieldhouse, I will be ecstatic. I will be ecstatic on this show because he has all the qualities that I want the Steelers to hire. Once again, young offensive guy from a great tree, from a Sean McVay's coaching tree. Here's what I know about Shieldhouse. He's either going to get a head job or he's going to get an OC job. One of the two. Let's shift now. We do this around this time of year where obviously there's not 10 teams left or 10 or more teams left. So Bryce's best 10 teams, that's gone until next season, which is very, very unfortunate. So let's do a new version of Bryson's best 10. My top 10 players that are still playing in the NFL playoffs, that are going into conference championship weekend. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll do the exact same thing with the two Super Bowl teams, the top 10 players in Super Bowl 60. But we got to see how the players on this list and others decide who gets to Super Bowl 60. So let's go and get the background music. Bryce's best 10. And here we go. All right. We will start at number 10, the 10th best player in the National Football League. The 10th best player in the NFL going into conference championship weekend is Garrett Bowles, offensive tackle for the Denver Broncos. Garrett Bowles is the 10th best player going into conference championship weekend, and here's why. So as valuable as he already was, he's getting even more valuable because the fact that he's not protecting Bo Nix anymore. He's going to be protecting Jarrett Stidham, making his first start of the season. Listen, all-pro caliber guy. He's always been an elite tackle for a long time. I was shocked to see that this was first year being an all-pro caliber guy. I've loved what I've seen from him over the course of his career since 2017, but he's going to have to protect Jarrett Stidham. That's going to be a big job for him, especially going against the likes of some of the pass rushers New England brings to the table. Garrett Bowles is the 10th best player going into conference championship weekend. Somebody that, if the Broncos win, he could be facing one-on-one in Super Bowl 60. At number 9, the 9th best player in conference championship weekend is Jared Verse, the pass rusher for the Los Angeles Rams. Jared Verse, 9th best player during conference championship weekend. So you look at the stats, you're like, oh, he wasn't even first on his team in sacks. That was Byron Young, who's a Pro Bowler this year. And for the record, Byron Young, first guy, he was the number 11 guy that I had for conference championship weekend. So he's the first guy out. A lot of Byron Young's success, as excellent as he is, comes because of the fact that Jared Verse draws so much attention. This is a guy who was Defensive Rookie of the Year, unbelievably quick and ridiculously strong off the ball. He was my pick coming into the season, actually, to be the Defensive Player of the Year. Didn't quite live up to those lofty standards that Myles Garrett is going to get this year by breaking the sack record, but this is somebody who could make Sam Darnold's life a living hell, as he has for the last couple of years, not just in the regular season, but in now, this will be his second time facing Darnold in the postseason. Jared Verse is the 9th best player for conference championship weekend. Another pass rusher is at the number 8 spot from the Denver Broncos. It is Nick Bonitto. Nick Bonitto is the 8th best player during conference championship weekend. Here's why. So he had 14 sacks during the regular season. He gets the quarterback at will. He was the best pass rusher on a defensive line that, helped the Denver Broncos lead the league by a mile in sacks. It's going to be for Denver, who is a home underdog, understandably so, with Jarrett Stidham under center. This Denver defense is going to have their best game of the season. And we know what they bring to the table. Zach Allen, Bonitto, Jonathan Cooper, a lot of great players in that front four. They're going to have to make Drake May's life miserable. They're going to have to make him uncomfortable. Obviously, Drake has had more turnovers than he has touchdowns in these playoffs. Nick Bonitto is going to have to be a key player in making that happen. He is the 8th best player here in Conference Championship Weekend. At number 7, we go to the team the Broncos are facing, the Patriots. At number 7, it is Christian Gonzalez. Christian Gonzalez, corner for the New England Patriots, 7th best player during Conference Championship Weekend. So this is a guy who's been just a shutdown corner. This is somebody who, again, you could say some of his inflated Pro Football Focus statistics. I think he has, quarterbacks have like a 45 passer rating when targeting receivers that are defended by Christian Gonzalez. The Chargers don't have a true number one, really, outside of, I guess, Lab McConkey. And obviously the Texans, without Nico Collins last week, did not have a number one receiver. With that being said, I love this kid going back to his days at Oregon. He's dealt with some injuries over time, but when he's been healthy, when he's been in this Patriots defensive lineup, you've seen New England kind of shock some people with how good they've been on that side of the ball against some of the better quarterbacks of this league, I guess with the exception of C.J. Stroud. We'll see how they do it against Jarrett Stidham. Obviously, Christian Gonzalez is going to have to be impactful. If he gets an interception this game or just denies Cortland Sutton, that's going to be something to watch in the AFC Championship game on Sunday. Christian Gonzalez is the 7th best player for Conference Championship Weekend. We're going to the NFC now. At number 6, our first Seattle Seahawk, it is Jackson Smith-Njigba. JSN, wide receiver for the Seahawks, is the 6th best player during Conference Championship Weekend. So Jackson Smith-Njigba, listen, he is unbelievable route runner, ridiculously fast, great hands, all the qualities, I guess with the exception of size, that you would want in an elite number one wide receiver. Led the NFL in receiving yards, was Darnold's go-to man. Again, the fact that Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith-Njigba didn't really do much, because they didn't have to do much in that playoff game against the San Francisco 49ers, has to be good news for Seahawks fans, the way that their defense is played. So, listen, I think this is a guy who can impact the outcome of games. We know the weakness of the LA Rams defense is corner, so that could be something he exposes. He's had some big games against the Rams in his career, so I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, 6th best player going into Conference Championship Weekend. We're going to another Bronco. This is actually our last Bronco on the list. At number 5, going to the top 5, it is Pat Surtain II, corner from the Denver Broncos. He is the 5th best player during Conference Championship Weekend. So obviously he's the reigning Defensive Player of the Year. This is somebody who is the true definition of a shutdown corner. You can just, when you watch the Denver defense and watch, Josh Allen last week and other quarterbacks throughout the season, they are going at Riley Moss, the other corner opposite Pat Surtain, at will. They're saying, we're not even going to go in the same area as number 2. He's not going to impact the outcome of this game the way that he did so many times back in 2024 when he won DPOY. We're going to attack Riley Moss and see if we can win those matchups. So in a game like this against the New England Patriots and Drake May, he's going to have to be his best, just like Nick Bonino, who we mentioned earlier. If he was able to pick off a pass from Drake May, flip field position, whatever the case may be, that could be absolutely gigantic. Pat Surtain II is the 5th best player during Conference Championship Weekend. But he's not even the best corner on this list. That title goes to number 4 guy on our list. It is Devon Witherspoon. Devon Witherspoon, cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. He is the 4th best player during Conference Championship Weekend. Devon Witherspoon, according to Pro Football Focus, which you all know I love PFF. Don't always agree with them, but I trust their football knowledge implicitly. Devon Witherspoon this season is the highest graded cornerback in the National Football League. And so when you're playing a Seattle defense that I've said has some parallels to that Legion of Boom, just as it pertains to their speed. They can get to the quarterback, obviously. Just how they fly to the football. Devon Witherspoon is a guy to keep your eyes on. Obviously, he's going to be playing opposite Puka Nacua. That to me is the single one-on-one matchup of the weekend. Puka Nacua, Devon Witherspoon. Can't wait to watch on Sunday night during the NFC Championship game. Devon Witherspoon, 4th best player in Conference Championship Weekend. Now we're going to the quarterbacks. At number 3 from the New England Patriots, you know who he is, Drake May. Drake May, quarterback for the New England Patriots, is the 3rd best player during Conference Championship Weekend. So again, he's could win the award, could win MVP, won't finish lower than 2nd. The only downside about Drake May, if we have the graphic from Monday's show, Drake May, it's been a bit of a bumpy playoffs. It hasn't been bad, but it's been far from excellent. He has 4 total touchdowns, 5 turnovers, and he's completing sub 60% of his throws, and a 93 rating, which isn't terrible, but far from what he posted in the regular season. But you see right there on the bottom, 2-0 record because the Patriots defense has been absolutely phenomenal. The fumbling problem is a little bit of a concern. Now, you could attribute that, especially in the Texas game, to, man, it was 30 degrees. It was wet, rainy, cold, going against that Houston defense and Will Anderson, you're going to fumble the ball a few times. With that being said, going on the road to Denver, I could see Josh McDaniels putting together a pretty darn conservative, a play calling, on display against Denver, given the fact, man, our defense has been dominating. Jarrett Stidham's on the other side. The best way for us to win this game is just don't screw up. Kind of like a callback to some of those New England Patriots teams. Brady wouldn't always put up crazy numbers, especially early in the dynasty. They just wouldn't turn the ball over. And sometimes they would turn you over on the other side. So I think that's what you're going to have to see from Drake May. I don't expect a crazy game from him. I think if they make the Super Bowl, which I'll be honest, I expect them to based on the matchup, I think that is where you're going to see, win or lose, that was the Drake May game based on the two defenses potentially that he could play. Drake May is the third best player in Conference Championship weekend. At number 2, it is the best receiver on this list, and in my opinion, the best receiver in football, or second best to Justin Jefferson, respect him. It is Puka Nacua, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. Puka Nacua, second best player during Conference Championship weekend. Here's why. I said Jackson Smith-Njigba had all of the physical traits you could possibly want in a receiver outside of size. Well, Puka's got size. Puka's not as fast as JSN, but great hands, unbelievable ability to run after the catch, and obviously he is as gifted a route runner, as much of a technician of a route runner as there is. The connection he has with Matthew Stafford is just unbelievable, off the charts, unstoppable, as we've seen all season long. Puka Nacua, again, as I said earlier, the matchup between he and Devon Witherspoon, cannot wait to watch. I'm excited to see how Mike McDonald wants to counter the Puka Nacua factor in this game. Puka Nacua, second best player during Conference Championship weekend, and his quarterback is number 1 on this list. It is Matthew Stafford. Matt Stafford is the best player during Conference Championship weekend in the National Football League. Here's why. So, again, if I had to vote for MVP with respect to Drake May, who had an outstanding year, Stafford would get it for me. I won't go through the multitude of reasons. That's on a full video on the YouTube channel. Feel free to check it out. What I do know is this, is that at times in this postseason when it felt like the Rams are kind of leaking oil, whether it's the fact that their defense, which has been bad for a month and a half, came apart in the second half against Carolina. It's like, oh my God, the Rams are going to get upset. As a double-digit road favorite, Matt Stafford, cool, calm, comfortable. He's always been a late-game winning drive artist, even going back to his time in Detroit. Boom, 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 down the field, throws the game-winning touchdown pass. I think it was to Cody Parkinson to win it against Carolina last week. The Rams defense, which have been playing relatively well, questionable offensive game plan by McVay, and you give up the throw of the year to Caleb Williams to Cole Kmet, and all of a sudden it's like, we're going to collapse. We're going to lose this game. Rams defense gets a turnover on Caleb Williams, thanks to DJ Moore jogging on the play. Matt Stafford, boom, 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 down the field. Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, a whole bit. And they walk it off in overtime to advance to the conference championship game. This is a guy who's been there, done that, won a Super Bowl. If he can get an MVP and a Super Bowl MVP, then that would pretty much stack his resume as one of the top 15 quarterbacks, in my opinion, to ever play the game. Matt Stafford is the best player during a conference championship weekend. So there you go. Let's go and put up the list. Show you the whole list here from 10 to 1. So from 10 to 1, we got Garrett Bowles, offensive tackle for the Broncos. Jared Verse, edge rusher for the Rams. Nick Benito, edge rusher for the Broncos. Christian Gonzalez, cornerback for the Patriots. Jackson Smith-Njigba, receiver for the Seahawks. Pat Surtain II, defensive player of the year and corner for the Broncos. Devon Witherspoon, corner for the Seahawks. Drake May, quarterback for the Patriots. Puka Nacua, wide receiver for the Rams. And at the top of the list, the best players during conference championship weekend, Matthew Stafford, who is the best quarterback in the postseason, certainly remaining, and also the best player in the postseason remaining. Before we get out of here, we obviously have been paying attention. The NFL's been 2 stories, playoffs and coach hirings. So, again, we've had a few the last few days. I haven't really got a chance to talk Kevin Stefanski. Maybe I'll save that for Friday's show. Also, in addition, the fact that Baker Mayfield called him out publicly on social media. We know Stefanski, Baker were together in Cleveland. Didn't end so well. Talk about that on Friday probably. The Stefanski got the Falcons job. Mike McDaniel got the Chargers OC job, which, again, shout out to my guy, Drew, who I worked with in Florida. Great, great guy. Diehard Chargers fan who despised Greg Roman, which I'm sure all Chargers fans did, for his lack of creativity play calling. And so I texted him about the Mike McDaniel news, and he was just ecstatic. So, listen, this is somebody who he may not give this vibe just because, he's kind of awkward with the media, doesn't give the rah-rah tough guy coach vibe. But where does Mike McDaniel come from when it pertains to his coaching tree? He comes from Kyle Shanahan. What does Kyle Shanahan love to do? Run the bleeping football. Miami Daniel likes to do that too. The problem is because the Dolphins have trailed in so many games the last couple of years, he's had to rely on Tua, who has a series of limitations. And while I have been as critical as anybody, maybe more critical than anybody, of Justin Herbert in the postseason, rightfully so, by the way, Justin Herbert's better than Tua. Justin Herbert has immensely more talent, natural ability than Tua Tagovailoa. And so now you give a creative play caller like Mike McDaniel, that guy. We'll see what the Chargers do in the offseason to maybe revitalize that receiving core. They'll have both their tackles coming back healthy in 2026. Chargers could be a pretty scary offense next year, so I'm excited to see it. I obviously had Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator for the Packers, who did a great job there. He got the Miami job to replace McDaniel. Again, I was really impressed with the job he did in Green Bay even prior to the Micah Parsons deal. It's hard to really speculate on how well he'll do because you don't know what the Tua factor is going to be. You don't know. It feels like obviously the Dolphins want to move on from Tua. They benched him for Quinn Ewers. They made him the third string quarterback. The question though is, in a deal, if they were to move Tua, who's on outside of Deshaun Watson, the worst contract in football, you'll probably have to attach assets to the deal. You'll have to attach picks to Tua in a trade, as opposed to the other way around. You get equal compensation for just Tua. So that's going to make Jeff Hafley's job much harder. People suggesting, hey, they just cut Tua. That's a lot of dead money. Now, the Broncos did it, but the Broncos, new ownership, solid GM, Sean Payton, that's a well-run franchise. Miami, not the case. And we'll see who they bring in to be their GM. Maybe they get that right. Listen, you can rebuild any organization pretty quickly. Look at the Detroit Lions. Laughing stock for years. We think about Dan Campbell as we should, and a lot of people think about Ben Johnson, the OC, when he was there. Brad Holmes, where'd Brad Holmes come from? LA Rams. Again, like, you want to take guys from the best run organizations. I mean, you do that. That's why I want the Steelers to hire Nate Scheelhaus. Like, I want us to bring in young offensive guy from a well-run franchise and a historically proven coaching tree. Brad Holmes has done an amazing job in Detroit. So maybe Miami can build this back up. They'll have the work cut out for them. They have Josh Allen in division and the Patriots, who, I mean, they're going to be in Super Bowl contention for the next 15 years. And that's the reality of being in the NFL these days. Also, and this just got finalized. We'd heard the news in the days prior, but it's just been finalized according to Nate Taylor. As expected, the Chiefs have agreed to a contract with Eric Bieniemy to be their offensive coordinator. So, Eric Bieniemy obviously was the OC in Kansas City. I think he was in Kansas City from the time Andy Reid got there in 2013. He was Mahomes' offensive coordinator for the first 5 years. Yeah, first 5 years of Mahomes' career as a starter. And what did Patrick Mahomes do in that span? He won 2 Super Bowls, went to another, and won 2 league MVPs. Since then, he's won another Super Bowl, been to another Super Bowl, but the numbers have dipped. The production in this Kansas City offense has dipped. And for years, I was of the mindset, yeah, I think Bieniemy deserves a head coaching opportunity, but we know Andy Reid's the one calling the plays. Well, the Chiefs offense hasn't looked as good the last few years. It hasn't. Now, some of that's the decline of Kelsey, but it wasn't like, even when Kelsey was in his prime, Mahomes' last MVP year, 2022, have you seen the weapons? Juju Smith-Schuster was their number one receiver. It was Juju. It was Kadarius Toney, who couldn't catch a cold the following year. It was Sky Moore. I mean, we were talking about a bunch of, to quote the great Bill Parcells, a bunch of jacks that Patrick Mahomes, with the exception of Kelsey, was throwing to in 2022 when Eric Bieniemy was the OC. I mean, it was 2022 when Kansas City against the Raiders had the ring around the rosy play. Like, there was creativity. It was fun. It was a light show. Maybe Bieniemy brings that back. So I think that is a great hire by the Chiefs. Still need to build that O-line, and obviously you got to see how Mahomes comes back from that ACL. But Kansas City will be back in the mix without question. It's just a matter of how they can build this roster back to championship contention. The last one I wanted to hit on, though, Robert Saleh is hired by the Tennessee Titans to be their new head coach. I kind of like it, and here's why. Number one, for Saleh, this has been a theme. I keep saying it, but it's been a theme on this show. Hiring guys from great coaches, and in particular, great coaching trees. Kyle Shanahan, solid coaching tree. Robert Saleh comes from that. And he obviously did, I thought, an exceptional job. I thought he was the best assistant coach in the NFL this season. With the number of guys San Francisco went down, obviously, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. Not just that they have those guys go down. San Francisco, one of the youngest defenses in the league. They had a non-existent pass rush in large part because of the injury to Bosa. And they were a pretty good defense this year. And situationally, an excellent defense. And you say, well, it's time with the Jets. Man, I think from here on out, we need to have a rule on this show and a rule when it comes to analyzing the NFL. If somebody in their first opportunity, player or coach or GM, who knows, if somebody in their first opportunity bombs with the Jets or Browns, blame the Jets or the Browns. Blame them. Their track record is what it is. So Saleh is a guy I think absolutely deserves another opportunity, especially given the job he did in San Francisco. There's reporting that if Brian Dable, doesn't get the Bills job, which he's in the running for, if he doesn't get the Bills job, he's coming to Nashville to be the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. So you have Saleh who's going to come in, probably fix the defense. I mean, think about this. Saleh was far from perfect with the Jets. Again, it's the Jets. Jets defense was great with him. They move on from Saleh. What did the Jets do this season? By the way, with a defensive coach in Aaron Glenn, what did the Jets do this season? Became the first team in history to have 0 interceptions. Feels like that I had a few with Saleh as that coach, right? Like you luck into a few interceptions. So he'll fix the defense. You got Jeffrey Simmons, who's a monster. We don't get to talk about Jeffrey Simmons much because he's on a terrible team, but he's an elite defensive lineman. Rebuild the defensive draft. They got to rebuild a lot of things. They're not a very good roster. But he bring in Dable, who did a good job with Josh Allen in his development process, who helped Daniel Jones go from bust to now we view him, depending on how he comes off the injury, as, okay, he's a decent starter in the NFL. So now you have a good coaching staff. Dable, because it kind of fell apart with the Giants, like it feels like it's going to be a while, unless it's Buffalo, where he gets another head coaching opportunity. Saleh will hire a good staff. Saleh is as dysfunctional as Tennessee has been. They're not even the same galaxy as the Jets. Only the Browns are. For a start, division's kind of tough. Colts have an excellent coach. Got to see how they rebuild with Daniel Jones potentially coming back. If they take a quarterback, we'll see. Texans have a great defense, and Trevor Lawrence had the best season of his career. So his work's cut out for him. AFC South's better than people give it credit for. But with a young, talented quarterback in Cam Ward, I mean, look what happened with the young, talented quarterback drafted in the top 3 with the New England Patriots. Now you can say, oh, the Patriots are well run. We didn't think Drake May was going to be a freaking MVP candidate in year 2. There's a reason Cam Ward was the first overall pick in 2024, or 5 rather. Number 1, it's a weak quarterback draft. Number 2, the upside's there. The arm talent's there. The mobility, escapability is there. Second half of this year, saw some flashes. Had a few good games against, Tennessee, against San Francisco, Cleveland. Like, there were moments like, okay, you're seeing the progression from Cam Ward. He was a much better player in week 17 than he was in week 1. And that's what you want to see. Pair Brian Dable with that guy, assuming he is the OC. Tennessee could be a team that, potentially is certainly not a playoff team in the AFC, but is one where it's like, okay, you see the building blocks for a rebuild here. So I think the Saleh hire makes sense. I really do. I just saw this. Schefter just reported this. Packers are interviewing defensive backs coach Al Harris. Al Harris was very good in Green Bay today for the defensive coordinator job. That would be a good move, I think. Because obviously they lost, as we mentioned earlier, they lost Jeff Hafley. He's now the head coach in Miami. I would be for that move for Green Bay. Al Harris was on McCarthy's staff in Dallas. Players loved him. He did a great job there as their defensive backs coach. He gets an opportunity in Green Bay. I think he'll absolutely crush it. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube, as well as on Facebook, on Twitch, on X, and probably on Friday on Instagram as well. Please sure to check out the Grid Network, anywhere you get your podcasts. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcasts. I'm on it. Some amazing content creators such as Barry Grant Jr. with the All Even Podcast, Alfred Parsard Jr. with the Metropolitan Report. Mets are making some moves as of late. Luis Robert Jr., solid pickup for New York. You got my man Tim with Boston Sports Summit. We've got coming up on Saturday, and go and put up the graphic, the Saturday morning tailgate. This is our season finale, ladies and gentlemen. It's our last episode to the fall. Saturday morning tailgate this Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific time. Myself, Tim Barnard, Arthur Hurst, we will be here to obviously recap the national championship game, give our reactions to that. We'll also be giving our final top 25s of the year. So based on the entire 2025 college football season, who are the best 25 teams? We haven't done this in a while. We've done Buckeyes Breakfast, the View, and Gator City. All three are going to be back for a recap of our team season and what's to look ahead for our respective football programs. So very, very excited for all of that. Tune in to Saturday morning tailgate, obviously on Saturday. Last episode, season finale until next season at 10 a.m. Eastern, at 7 a.m. Pacific time, live on the Grid Network via YouTube and on X. And check out Carving It Up on Friday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. We'll have conference championship talk, maybe some coaching moves. It'll be very, very fun. So we hope you will tune in for that. Hope everybody has a great week. Everybody stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. And peace out to my Warriors. They're done. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.